Okay, let's dive into one of the biggest, most challenging, but also most revolutionary books in all of philosophy, Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. Now, I know it sounds intimidating, but its central idea is a complete game changer. This isn't just a book with a new philosophy, it's an investigation into the very limits of what human beings can possibly think. So, how did Kant plan to flip the switch in a room where philosophers had been stumbling around for centuries? Let's get into it.
This right here is exactly how Kant saw the philosophy of his time. He believed that for centuries, all these brilliant thinkers were tackling the biggest questions you can imagine: God, freedom, the soul, but they were doing it without ever stopping to check if their main tool, human reason itself, was even capable of the job. It was just a chaotic free-for-all, and Kant decided, you know what? It's time someone finally turned on the lights.
So here's our game plan. We're going to walk through Kant's arguments step by step. We'll start with the problem he saw, then his revolutionary solution, how our minds actually build knowledge, the wild contradictions reason runs into, his crucial split between appearance and reality, and finally, what this all means for the limits of what we can ever truly know. So what was this crisis that had Kant so worried? Well, he looked out at the world of ideas and saw this massive, glaring gap. On one side, you had the sciences, which were just taking off, and on the other side, you had philosophy. And this contrast is everything, seriously. Science was like this incredible skyscraper, building on solid foundations, getting higher and more impressive every year. But metaphysics, it was more like a battlefield, just a pile of rubble where philosophers were constantly tearing down each other's arguments instead of building anything that could last. This whole situation led Kant to a pretty radical thought. He asked, what if the problem isn't with the questions we're asking? What if the problem is with the tool we're using to answer them? He argued that before we even try to build a system of metaphysics, we have to do an audit. We have to conduct a critique of pure reason itself, to figure out what it's good at and, just as important, what it can't do. So to fix this whole mess, Kant came up with what he called his happy idea. And it was a total reversal of perspective, as huge and dramatic as the one that completely changed how we see the universe. And this, right here, is the absolute heart of his entire project. See, for centuries, everyone just assumed that knowledge worked like this. There's a world of objects out there, and our minds just passively soak up information about them. Kant flipped this completely on its head. He said, okay, that's not working. Let's try a different assumption. What if the world, as we experience it, has to conform to the built-in structures of our own minds?
Think about it this way. Your mind isn't a blank slate just waiting for the world to write on it. No, it's more like a camera that comes with its own powerful, unchangeable lenses, things like space and time. These lenses actively shape every single picture the camera takes. We can never, ever experience the world without them. They're part of the operating system.
Okay, so if the mind is actively structuring everything, how does it do it? What's in this mental toolkit? Well, Kant breaks it down for us, and it all starts with two different kinds of statements we can make. So first, he splits judgments into two types. You have analytical judgments, which basically just unpack a concept. If I say all bachelors are unmarried, I'm not really telling you anything new about bachelors. It's true by definition. But then you have synthetical judgments, and these actually add new information. The idea of heavy isn't automatically baked into the idea of body. That's something we have to learn from experience. This brings us to the real mystery, the third category that Kant was obsessed with. How can a statement add new knowledge to the world, but also be known as true without needing to go out and test every single experience? This is the magic of science. A law, like every event has a cause, expands what we know, but we don't test it every second of every day. We just assume it's universally true. For Kant, this is possible because these aren't laws of the world out there. They're the fundamental rules our mind uses to organize reality itself. And now we get to the really dramatic part. What happens when our powerful reason forgets its own limits? What happens when it tries to apply its rules to things way beyond any possible experience, like the universe as a whole? Well, it falls into these spectacular head-spinning contradictions. Take this classic philosophical question. It seems pretty straightforward, right? Either the world had a beginning or it didn't. Simple. But, and this is the amazing part, Kant shows that your own reason can prove both sides with flawless logic. This is what Kant calls an antinomy. It's reason at war with itself. On the one hand, you can build a perfect argument that the universe must have had a beginning, because an infinite series of past moments can't ever be completed. Makes sense. But wait,
You can also build an equally perfect argument that it can't have a beginning, because then it would have to come from an empty void of nothing, which also makes no sense. It's a total paradox, a philosophical dead end.
So how on earth do we get out of this mess? Is philosophy just broken? No. Kant's solution is so elegant, and it all comes down to one final, incredibly important distinction he asks us to make.
And here it is, Kant's brilliant escape hatch. He says we have to distinguish between two different worlds. First, there's the phenomenal world. This is the world as it appears to us, the world that has already been structured by our minds. This is the world of science, of experience. But then there's the noumenal world, reality as it is in itself, totally independent of our minds. We can think about this world, but we can never, ever directly experience or know it. So those contradictions, those antinomies, they only happen because we make a huge mistake. We try to apply the rules of our experience, like time and cause and effect, to the universe as a noumenal thing in itself. But those rules only apply to the phenomenal world, the world of appearances. Asking, does the universe in itself have a beginning in time, is a meaningless question. It's like asking what color the number 7 is. Time is a feature of our perception, not a feature of reality in itself. And this brings us right to the profound conclusion of Kant's whole project. By drawing this firm line in the sand between appearance and reality, he basically creates a map of the true territory of human knowledge. Kant's entire philosophy was really an attempt to answer these three massive questions, and the Critique of Pure Reason is his definitive, book-length answer to that very first one.
So here's the ultimate takeaway. We can have real, objective, certain knowledge, but only within the world of our possible experience, the phenomenal world. All those traditional big questions of metaphysics, God, the immortal soul, free will, those are concepts about the noumenal world. We can't prove them, but we also can't disprove them with our reason, because they are simply beyond its jurisdiction.
And it is so important to understand this. Kant wasn't trying to tear down belief. He was actually trying to protect it. By showing that reason is totally powerless to disprove things like God or freedom, he felt he was defending morality and religion from bad philosophical attacks. He was moving them to a safer place, built on a totally different foundation. And that really leaves us with this final, powerful thought to chew on. By showing us what we can't know for certain, did Kant end up creating a protected space for things we might have other reasons to believe in? Moral reasons, for instance? It's a powerful legacy, carefully drawing the border of our knowledge so we can finally understand what lies on both sides of that line.